arrival of the constitutional officers of the state of Minnesota, the Honorable Steve Simon, Secretary of State, the Honorable Julie Blaha, State Auditor, and the Honorable Keith Ellison, Attorney General. I have the honor to announce the arrival of the Honorable Melissa Hortman, Speaker of the Minnesota House, the Honorable Aaron Murphy, Majority Leader of the Minnesota Senate, and the Honorable Natalie Hudson, Minnesota Supreme Court Chief Justice. I have the honor to announce the arrival of the Honorable Peggy Flanagan, Lieutenant Governor of the state of Minnesota. I have the honor to acknowledge members of the Minnesota Supreme Court and the Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals. I have the honor to acknowledge the Honorable Mark Dayton, former Governor of the state of Minnesota. Please stand, as you are able, for the presentation of the colors and remain standing for the singing of the national anthem. Please welcome members of the Owatonna High School Choir for the singing of the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please welcome Reverend Mark Patrick.
Well, please be seated. When I was in seminary years ago, or a lot of years ago, there was a theologian that I especially appreciated, Helmut Thielicke, and he said that we should only pray for things that we're willing to be part of the answer for. So when we pray, we're actually making ourselves available for action, not just good feelings or good intentions. So let's pray. Our Lord, we've come today for our yearly reassessment of where we are as a state. And this will lead to our recalibrating our priorities and probably reallocating some of our resources. But we live in Minnesota and we're grateful. Matter of fact, we believe that it's the best state in the country. We love the four seasons. Thank you. We love the North Shore of Superior. Thank you. We love the cold, natural air conditioning climate way up north. Thank you. We love the mystical, magical northern lights. Thank you. We love the bountiful, rich farmland. Thank you. We love our excellent schools, and our sports. Thank you. We love the creative arts and culture celebrating our diversity. Thank you. We love our renowned healthcare resources. Thank you. And we love the fact that we have more than 10,000 lakes. Thank you. Yet, Lord, our challenge is that we also have nearly 10,000 opinions of how we should move forward. And some of them are really, really good. We acknowledge that the polarization and the divisions in our country are beyond anything we could have expected. So now we look to you to bring us together. When cynicism creeps into our reactions and our conversations, bring us back to our best selves as we collaborate with each other. When controversy becomes our focus, rekindle our compassion with one another. When caustic criticism becomes so natural, remind us of our ability to work together toward creative solutions. When the negativity surrounding us seems overwhelming, enable us to create the mindset presented by the New Testament author Paul when he said, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. So, Lord, teach us to focus on what is positive and practical, and may the mindset inform our priorities and our decisions. Now, the Old Testament prophet Micah summed up your desires for us, Lord, this way. He said, "He has told you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God?" Lord, may we more and more live by these values. Bless our state of Minnesota. Guide our leaders with courage and creativity, and bless each of us as we do our part. Amen.
I have the honor to announce the arrival of the Honorable Tim Walz, Governor of the State of Minnesota.
Thank you. Thank you all, and good evening. Chaplain, thank you for the beautiful words, and please, one more round of applause for the Owatonna High School choir. Incredible, incredible. Madam Speaker and members of the Minnesota House of Representatives, Madam Majority Leader and members of the Minnesota Senate, Madam Chief Justice, distinguished members of the Minnesota Supreme Court, and Chief Judge Siegel. My fellow constitutional officers, members of my staff, cabinet, and the administration, Governor Dayton and Mrs. Anna Dayton, wonderful to see you both. Distinguished tribal leaders, members of the Minnesota National Guard, Chaplain Mark Patrick, Superintendent Elstead, Principal Kath, staff and faculty at Owatonna High School, and especially students of Owatonna High School. Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan and Minnesota's second gentleman, Tom Weber. Minnesota's First Lady, Gwen Walz. Thank you. Honored guests and my fellow Minnesotans. Maybe it's the smell of that freshly sharpened pencil. Maybe it's the sight of those desks all lined up in their neatest rows. Maybe it's the sound of nervous, youthful chatter filling the hallways. But whatever it is, if you're a teacher, nothing, and I mean nothing, beats the first day of school. Take it from Gwen and me. For many years of our lives, we celebrated New Year's Day not in January, but in early fall, when the doors opened back up and the kids came back from summer break. The first day of school is all about hope. It's all about opportunity, and it's all about endless possibility. That's never been more true than here in Owatonna last fall, when the doors opened on this beautiful new building, a 317,000 square foot state-of-the-art symbol of this community's commitment to its children. Imagine when you walk through the door the first time as a student, the whole world opens up in front of you. The classrooms here are gorgeous. They're full of natural light and modern technology. And as you explore, you'll find not only the wood, the metal, and the engine shop, you'll find next-generation hydroponic equipment, a nursing lab, a full commercial kitchen, and so much more. Because this building's a factory, and what it manufactures is futures. You can see when you walk in here, the curb appeal is undeniable. But this building wasn't built for looks or the first day of school. It was built for the last. When a student walks out of here the last time as a graduating senior, they're going to have a ticket in their pocket, a ticket to a good-paying career that they can feel excited about pursuing. They'll go on to be construction managers and firefighters, farmers, welders, and cardiac surgeons. And not only will they have the foundation to pursue any life they can dream of, many of them will have advanced credentials that gives them a leg up on that journey. Think about how many young people will walk out those doors each spring, full of passion, purpose, and ready to make a contribution to this community, this state, and this world. Ready to work and build and grow. Ready to make the state of our state even stronger than it is today. I came and thank all of you for coming tonight to celebrate this magnificent school and discuss the work that we're doing to improve the lives of children across Minnesota. But I also want people to remember just how many things had to go right for this vision to become a reality. Everybody in this town knows the backstory. The old high school, while beautiful and historic, was 100 years old. And people in this community have been talking about replacing it for decades. But it wasn't until a few years ago that the leaders in the public and private sectors came together and decided it was time to stop talking and time to start building. Federated Insurance, a cornerstone of Owatonna since the early 20th century, pledged a major investment, not just for the good of their community, which they care deeply about, but the good of the future workforce. Other companies joined in, offering not just money, but equipment and expertise. Owatonna voters overwhelmingly approved a bonding referendum. And finally, this community was ready to take the plunge and actually put some shovels in the ground. That small window of opportunity, that brief moment when the stars aligned, produced a community institution that you're in today that will stand for decades and will impact tens of thousands of children. Many in this room know that most of the time, politics is incremental, frustrating, and sometimes gridlocked altogether. But every once in a while, you get an opportunity to make a whole lot of progress in a short amount of time. It happened here in Owatonna in 2019, and after a half century of waiting, it happened again in St. Paul in 2023. I couldn't be more proud of the work that we've done together in this window of opportunity to improve education inside the walls of this school and in every school across the state. We've given our children a brighter future by making the largest investment in public education in our state's history. We've increased teacher pay and doubled down on our efforts to recruit teachers from more diverse backgrounds. We've expanded access to mental health resources, social workers, nurses, and chemical dependency counselors. We've invested in making sure every student can read at grade level. We've expanded special education, career, and technical education as part of our commitment that says every Minnesota student should receive a world-class education, regardless of where they live or where they go to school. We're working to make Minnesota the best state in the country for a kid to grow up, and our work extends far beyond the walls of this school. We've expanded access to pre-K and to affordable childcare. We have made a $1 billion investment in affordable housing so those children and families have a place to call home. We've established free college education for low-income families so everybody has the opportunity to pursue their dream. We've made it easier to balance career and family by making paid family and medical leave the law of the land. And we want everyone to feel welcome, and we've made Minnesota a more welcoming place by outlawing things like conversion therapy for our LGBTQ youth and putting in new protections for trans Minnesotans so they can live their authentic lives. We've invested together hundreds of millions of dollars to bring competitive, high-paying jobs to Minnesota, to expand our economy with an eye towards a sustainable green energy future. We've expanded the right to collectively bargain and organize because Minnesota always has been and always will be a labor state. And we collectively have lived up to our responsibility to our elders by cutting taxes for our seniors. We've invested $300 million in public safety for communities across this state to fight crime and improve emergency services. And we struck a blow against climate change, putting Minnesota on a path to 100% clean energy by 2040 and leading the nation. We expanded voting rights to make it easier for people to vote, thanks to the leadership of Secretary Simon. And we've announced plans to stop medical debt from ruining people's credit and lives and cut that interest rate back to zero because of the leadership of the Attorney General. And we put food on the table for struggling families by passing a new child tax credit that is estimated to cut childhood poverty in Minnesota by 1/3, making Minnesota the state with the lowest childhood poverty rate in the country. Look, and speaking of putting the food on the table, especially in this place, we're already seeing real results from our groundbreaking commitment to providing free school, breakfast, and lunch to all of our children. The data shows 30% more kids are eating breakfast, 11% more kids are eating lunch at school than before. truly illustrating the scope of the problem that we're trying to tackle. That means students that might have had an empty stomach now go into that classroom full and ready to learn. Now yet, for some reason, some, and I will say this, especially from other states, roll their eyes when we talk about the importance of collectively working to educate and feed our children. They say it's not the role of the government to parent on all the food and all the education on this. Certainly not. But instead of working to solve those problems, they're spending their time and energy and their political capital picking fights with beer companies and librarians. Look, speaking on behalf of Minnesotans, we are happy to have people move here. We are happy to have private sector investment dollars here, and we're happy to have brilliant young people moving in from other states. But what we're not going to take is radical ideas that make it more difficult for someone to live the life that they're choosing to live. That is especially true where we're seeing across the country choosing to interfere with people's families. We saw it recently with a bunch of judges down in Alabama, ruled that a frozen embryo holds the same right as a human being. As a direct result of that decision, fertility clinics closed across the state, putting men and women only wishing to have a family with nowhere to turn. Some of you have heard me say this, and I heard people come up and say, we haven't heard you talk about this before. That's because your own personal decisions about your family are no one's business but your own. But I will say this, if you have never personally gone through the hell of infertility, I guarantee you someone you know has. And I know that when Gwen and I were having trouble getting pregnant, the anxiety, the frustration would have blotted out the sun. All we wanted was something that seemed so simple, to have that child. What those judges did was a direct attack on our family. It was a direct attack on my children. Gwen and I will not forget it, nor will we forgive it, and neither will thousands across this state. When Roe v. Wade was overturned in 2022, the door was wide open for this type of attacks on personal decisions and personal families. That attack has been here, and it's up to us to make sure we stop it. That's why here in Minnesota, the legislature took action after Roe versus Wade fell, writing protections for reproductive freedom into our state laws and making sure that people, not politicians, can make their own reproductive choices, including IVF. You have my pledge, as long as I am governor, IVF will continue to be a lifeline of hope for families just like mine, so they too can celebrate the beautiful families that each and every one of us so dearly want. So meanwhile, while they fight these fights, we're going to keep building. We're going to keep building those families. We're going to keep building communities. We're going to keep building more roads and bridges. We're going to keep building more career pathways and more schools, and we're going to be building more opportunities for our kids, their kids, and for generations to come. And I'll say, part of that good work includes following up on all of the incredible work that this legislature did. Things like building a new state agency focused on children, youth, and families to be more efficient in implementing programs. We need to stand up paid family and medical leave, and we need to make sure that our adult use cannabis work to make sure that we expunge those prosecutions that should have never been there in the first place, making sure adults can make their own choices. And that work, and I want to thank the people who do that work, the state employees who are working around the clock to make sure that Minnesotans can take advantage of this legislator's positive vision for Minnesota. So thank you to the state workers. That work will include building on a foundation for more success. Just recently, we've reached an agreement on a next set of budget targets. And I want to thank our legislative leaders for their cooperation, dedication, and working together. Earlier this year, Lieutenant Governor and I announced the major new infrastructure plan, something that always has bipartisan support, an ambitious effort to invest in the things that make our communities strong: clean water, safe streets, affordable housing. This plan makes sure that every community has safe streets. While violent crime has declined in Minneapolis-St. Paul and across the state, there's still much work to do. We're putting real funding behind this commitment, including expanding the capacity for the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension and planning for the construction of a new Minnesota State Patrol headquarters. This plan also makes sure that we're continuing to invest to make sure every Minnesotan has a safe and affordable place to call home. We're backing development of multifamily housing so that seniors, families, and anyone facing homelessness can find a place to be. And we want to update the Minneapolis Veterans Home to better serve those who have served us. This plan that's before the legislature makes sure that we're investing in clean water so every Minnesotan has access to it. We want to invest in grants and low-interest loans to replace lead pipes and remove the so-called forever chemicals from drinking water across the state. And being good stewards of the taxpayer dollars, we want to make sure that every building that's owned by the taxpayer is in good repair. Buildings like the ones at Minnesota State and the university are in need of renovation and upkeep, and our infrastructure plan has funding to make it happen. And the good news is all of that work will be done by union labor. Things might not be that flashy, but these are the initiatives that make an enormous difference in real people's lives across the state. And there's no reason we can't get them done this session. There's no reason that both parties can't be part of getting this done. I know we're not going to agree on everything. Safe streets, we can agree on. Clean water, we can agree on. Affordable housing, we can agree on. So I'm asking you to join me, and not just at the ribbon cutting, but in the work to get it done in the first place. One last thing I'd like to talk about when you're in this space. I walked around the halls, and some of you, I hope you got a chance to see this magnificent facility. I walked around the halls, and I tried to put myself in the shoes of a student walking in there for the first time. I want those kids to feel hopeful. I want them to feel inspired. I want them to feel cared for, which they are. But there's one thing that I want no kid to feel. The one thing that no child in any building should feel is afraid. When you come into high school, you should be worried about pop quizzes and prom dates, not mass shootings. And that's why, as governor, I've made it a point to move towards responsible gun ownership and take the NRA on these issues. Last year, we implemented 2 pieces of legislation that are long overdue. Red flags are extreme risk protection orders, and we strengthen background checks. And make no mistake about it, this keeps guns out of the wrong hands and save lives. Tonight, I'm urging the legislature together to join me and our schools and our communities to make them just a little bit safer by strengthening the requirements around the safe storage of firearms and asking our neighbors to report lost or stolen firearms, and increasing the criminal penalties for straw purchases. These are bipartisan ideas that we should be able to get done, making a difference in safety in Minnesota. Again, I'm not naive. It can be a dangerous world. We were reminded of that earlier when 3 of our bravest first responders lost their lives at the hands of a man who should have never had a gun. We know that we can't legislate against every act of violence, but surely we can do more. Asking your neighbors to store those guns safely, to report them if they're stolen, is a simple step that can save lives, and it's high time Minnesota take that simple step. In a school, it's always a first and last on things. And look, if Minnesotans want to look at the record of accomplishment and keep sending us back to St. Paul, I wouldn't mind that one bit. We've got a lot of work yet to do, but this window of opportunity is still open. We need to keep working to get the progress done. But I, like all of you, know that public service is not a permanent privilege for any one party nor any one person. No matter which party we belong to or how long we've been in office, there was a first day on the job. My guess is it probably looked a lot like the first day of school. A little bit of nervousness, a little bit of excitement. Can't find the bathrooms, who you're going to have lunch with. All of you know it's what it was. Well, the truth is, each of us is going to have a last day in office too. We're going to leave a little bit older, some a lot older, maybe a little bit grayer, but hopefully all of us a little wiser. We walk out the doors of the Capitol in St. Paul for the last time. We're going to get that opportunity, every single one of us, to ask ourselves a simple question. What kind of future have we built? Not for us, but for our kids and the state that we love. I don't know how long the window of opportunity we're in will stay open, but I'm committed to you that we'll do everything in our power to try and improve the lives of Minnesotans and leave our state better than we found it. A generation from now, nobody's going to remember what silly fight got somebody on TV, but the things that we're fighting for will still stand. Better schools like this one, cleaner water, safer streets, better paying jobs, more prosperous businesses, a state that invests in our children and our future. That's what it means to build. That's what it means to grow. And I think that's what it means to lead. Tonight, I'm proud to report that the state of our state is strong, Minnesota. And one of the main reasons is because the kids of our state are better equipped to thrive. If you've ever doubted that, I would ask everyone, just come on down to Owatonna, walk through these halls, and join me in dreaming about the futures that will be built right here. Thank you. May God bless each and every one of you, and may God bless the state of Minnesota.
Thanks, that is beautiful. I'm so excited for you. Oh, okay. All good. Republicans have stood up this past year for responsible budgets and lower taxes and crime.
You want to cite in, or you want to just? I came on the bus, so I'm not staffed. So I thought, hey, why don't I find a camera and just say some things? Okay, I'll get out before.
Do you need a staff person?
I'm not done with that yet. Oh, I got you.
So I thought, I'll find somebody.
Yeah.
Here. So I've only got.
Mic check. Oh, we'll do this. But I will still. Yes, this is going not to. Oh, I see. Here we go. Test 1 2 1 2. Testing 1 2. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. Testing. This is leader Caroline Cummings giving a press briefing. Why I would never ever want to be on this side of things. You guys good? Want me to keep going?
I'm good.
Good? Are you good, Quinn? Yeah. Okay.
Check, check. Testing, test. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we're ready. Let's go.
Waiting on you guys.
All right.
Time is money. Let's go.
What is the soundtrack? Something's playing. Have the Republicans concluded their remarks?
No, you're first.
They have not begun theirs. Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. I knew Senator Mark Johnson was going to do a response. Didn't want to jump in front of that. Lovely evening here in Owatonna. Very happy that the roads cooperated with us and everybody got down here safely. It is an extraordinary institution. I'm glad that the governor brought us here. It does kind of show what can happen when people band together and they have commitment and they have a vision to something that they want to make great. Much like we did in the 2023 session, really, as the governor said, for the first time in 50 years, a really incredible, momentous session, a lot to celebrate there, a lot to focus on looking forward. And the part of the speech that I liked the best was when he talked about how we have to kind of begin with the end in mind. One day we will all walk out of the state capitol for the last time, and we have to ask ourselves if the things that we did while we were there were worthy of the people of the state of Minnesota. And I think the answer is a resounding yes for the work that we've done so far, and there's more to come. So thank you for being here, and I'll turn it over to the Senate Majority Leader.
I am so happy to be in this high school, knowing that the principal here is Corey Kath, one of our former colleagues. And when we're done here, I'm going to go try and find him in the crowd. This beautiful building is not only a testament to what communities can do together, but I think it is a model for schools and for education, pairing together the things we need to learn like algebra and literature with the hands-on skills that the governor talked about, whether it is nursing or cooking or the trades. It is an important model, something that I think communities across the state are looking for, and ways in which we can continue to invest in our kids. The thing I loved best about the speech was the hopefulness of it. And if we're not thinking every day about how we're building a future for our communities, our families, and the kids to come, we're not doing it right. Minnesota is a wonderful place. It's a place that we call home, but we have more to do to make sure it is the home for more and more Minnesotans who are going to come live here and help us build our future. And with that, I'd like to turn it to Majority Leader Long.
Well, thanks very much. I think it was very appropriate that we had our high school teacher governor bringing us back to high school and reminding us what his roots were and what brings us all together. And I think that education has certainly been one of our top priorities at the state legislature, certainly one of our biggest wins, I think, from the historic investment that we made in K-12 education last year. And I, too, was really inspired by the governor's hopefulness and the framing that he put out there that we really need to maximize the opportunities that are given to us. And I think being in a school having 2 small kids myself, I reflect on the urgency of the moment and what we need to do to try to make sure that we are maximizing our opportunity and potential, and I think we've done that, whether it's keeping our schools and communities safe, as the governor talked about with gun violence prevention, whether it's investing in important institutions like this one, or standing up for our climate and making sure we have a better future for our kids. So I thought it was a hopeful speech and a really important moment to bring us all together as a state.
Thank you.
What about, you made a point to plea for gun measures, more gun safety measures. How's that going to go?
Well, I know in the House, I think it was Thursday of last week, Representative Moeller chaired a committee hearing on making the penalties for straw purchasers more stringent, also for safe storage, and one other gun violence prevention measure that the governor just mentioned. And, mandatory reporting of lost and stolen. So I would expect that those bills will come to the House floor, and I would expect that we would have the votes to pass those measures. I think that she put them together in one bill on gun violence prevention, but I have to check in with her and see how that's teed up.
Similarly, in the Senate, those pieces of legislation, safe storage in particular, moving through the Judiciary Committee, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to take up those pieces of legislation as well.
We heard some comments about last year's investments in public safety, but a big piece of the budget framework announced last week was investments in EMS. We didn't hear a whole lot from the governor on that tonight. Is that something that you guys are still top of mind moving forward?
I think that the EMS issue and the investment in that and the investment in the policy that will guide us and the accountability that will help us understand where we need to go next is very important. Something that all the caucuses are talking about, our members are talking about, something that Minnesotans are seeking. But we have to make sure that we are building on a platform that will hold us accountable and make sure that the dollars that are being spent are accountable so that people get good emergency services across the state.
I think when you look at the issue of emergency medical services, you have to also look at it in the context of the substantial amount of local government aid and county program aid that was provided last year, and in addition, on top of that, $300 million in public safety aid that communities can use for exactly those kinds of services. So the legislature and the governor have demonstrated commitment to improving these services across the state, and as the Senate Majority Leader said, there's some policy work that we need to do to make sure that we're on a strong footing going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Give him a minute. Michelle is like, keep this train moving.
Okay, this is a little wobbly. Is that an okay height for you? Okay. No, I will tell him to speak up. Yeah.
We'll give you time to set up. That's fine.
Is there a way I can sneak this
We are
in
in your
there?
town.
You do everything, don't you, Rachel?
I was going to say, I don't know if I needed a photo of that.
You know what? You said it, Michelle.
Really shows us what you think of this.
It's wrist-side. You're standing by the wrist. Do you guys do white balance or anything? I don't know if I have anything to do that, but...
I have
Oh, we
white.
got some white.
We're good. There's weight right there.
Oh, perfect. You're good? All right. We are ready.
Well, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to just share some thoughts with you. Our governor just painted a very rosy picture of Minnesota. And while things look good on the surface, I just want to remind you what we are dealing with. Under a full Democrat control in the state of Minnesota in just 5 months, so looking back at last year, I want to remind everyone in Minnesota that $18 billion of surplus was spent. There were broken promises. Those dollars were not returned back to Minnesotans in a meaningful and tax relief way. We know that when there is tax relief offered for young families, families with small kids, as great as that sounds, and we are appreciative of that point, if Minnesota wasn't such an expensive place to live and to afford our lives, those things wouldn't be needed to the extent that they are truly needed. In addition to that $18 billion of surplus that is now gone, taxes and fees, our state budget was raised by another $10 billion. We grew government in a way that is unsustainable. You know that our economic forecast came out just a few weeks ago, and there was caution that was expressed by MMB saying caution for legislators and any future spending decisions that are made. We are in a beautiful school that is part of a public-private partnership. We're in beautiful Owatonna, and we know that schools need to be a place that kids can have what they need, that they've got the education that they need. But under Governor Walz, as he took his position as governor in 2019, think of those kindergartners in September of 2019. Those kindergartners are now in their 4th grade year, but they're testing as 3rd graders in the MCA tests in the spring showed us that 53% of Minnesota kids across the state cannot read at grade level. That is under the watch of Governor Walz. So as we are doing great things for schools, we have to realize that every mandate that was just put on schools last year costs districts money. We want to do the right things for kids so they have the education that they need. But when those mandates came through to our school districts, unfunded, school districts across the state, superintendents across the state have concerns. They want literacy. They want to make sure kids have what they need. But the READ Act, or the science of reading, to make sure that literacy increases, is coming at a cost that is unsustainable going forward. You heard about historic investments in public safety. And that is great, but those dollars that were allocated to communities across the state last year came with a lot of things that money could not be spent on. Specifically, tactical vehicles needed by districts, by departments that were needed in public safety. They could not make any use of those dollars to improve any type of their public safety buildings, including lighting, sidewalks, just common sense things. There were a lot of strings attached to the dollars as they came forward. You heard that money was saved, or our seniors were now, there was relief with Social Security. That is another broken promise. The tax on Social Security was means tested, and that was not fully repealed. Our seniors in the state of Minnesota are still paying tax on Social Security. And then I want to talk on straw purchases. We know that safety in our communities matters. And you heard the talk as the governor talked about the tragedy in Burnsville. What we found out with that is those guns were available to someone that never should have had guns in their possession, but that was made available to that person by a straw purchase. In 2019, House Republicans authored a bill that would increase the penalty on straw purchases. We battled to get that done session after session, and I'm happy to report that the increase to a penalty for straw purchases was included in the public safety bill last year, passed by the House and the Senate. And then when it came right down to the conference committee, that disappeared. So as much as you hear our governor talking about wanting to increase that penalty on straw purchases, we agree with that. So last week on the House floor, House Republicans brought that bill forward, wanted to get the vote on the fact that we could increase the penalty and reduce the accessibility of guns by straw purchases, and that was voted down on party lines. There's much more that we can talk about. I'm going to turn it over to Senator Johnson, and then we would be very much open to questions going forward.
Well, thank you, Leader Dameth. Appreciate it. Senator Mark Johnson, Senate District 1, Minority Lead in the Senate. Tonight we heard a lot from the governor. I was happy to hear him focus on the future of Minnesota. That was really part of his message tonight, was the future of Minnesota. Unfortunately, last session, as Leader Dameth pointed out, we took some big steps backwards in this state. In some recent polling, you can see that Minnesotans overwhelmingly are saying that they don't feel as if they're better off in this generation as they were the last. And they don't believe that their kids' generation is going to be doing as well as they have. There's a real pessimism in this state, where you see education steadily increasing in this state, and yet our schools are falling behind. You know, if we can loosen up some of the mandates for the funding, you know, where that money is going to be going, how schools can use it, let's give them the ability to do that, the flexibility to use those funds in their state. Businesses and entrepreneurs, they're feeling the weight of regulations and increased taxes on this state and what they're working on. Our border communities are struggling to keep businesses here in Minnesota. You know, you want to talk about law enforcement, being able to protect our streets, our people, our communities. They are facing huge challenges in how they can police our communities and keep our people safe. Then you look at some of the priorities that I think a lot of our residents are really expecting Minnesota to help to fulfill basic needs for them. Think about rural EMS. You expect an ambulance to come. If you make that 911 call, you expect somebody to be there, and yet the governor and the legislative leaders have set targets so low for these groups that I don't know how they survive. So these are some of the things that we have to face going forward, and I wish the governor would have addressed some of the plans that he had on how we're going to fix this state so we have more optimism. We have a future in this state for not only our children, but also our businesses, our people, just to be here, to stay in Minnesota. I think that hope is decimated, and we got to figure out ways to work hand in glove to get that back in Minnesota again. We need that hope here. With that, Representative Demuth, you did a great job on answering a lot of the questions there, but we still have opportunity here if you have more questions. Happy to take them.
Just going back to that, we were just talking about some funding for that in this year's legislature. I know there's a bill out there for $120 million. The target was 716. What is a happy medium for that number? Obviously, Republicans have held that they want kind of a more conservative budget, but there seems to be an appetite for funding there.
So the registered need, I think, is somewhere around $120 million is what's been stated so far. The problem that we're seeing with some of the current proposals that you don't know exactly where that money is going to be funneled to quite yet, just because the formula isn't defined well. So we got to make sure that it's effectively spent, not just that we push out $120 million, but that we use it where there's high ROI within those agencies and communities that need that. Anything else?
Any other questions?
Well, I guess we haven't heard you on camera talk about the budget targets. I know you guys came out swinging against it, saying, you know, after record spending last year, another $450 million. What do you think is a number that is more reasonable for supplemental spending this year?
Here's what I'll say on that. I mean, there are some needs across the state that we're looking at. You know, we just talked about EMS as one of those needs that has to happen. But if we do not address the deficit, the structural deficit that we have in our budget right now, we are just taking money out of the savings account to make sure that we can pay our bills. So we need to be focusing on what our long-term budget is, and we need some solutions for that going forward. And we continue to see all this money being spent. That's going to catch up with us really quick if we empty out the savings account and we still have to pay those bills.
And I would just add to that we haven't come up with an exact number, but again, looking at the needs, that rural EMS or EMS overall is in an area that we want to focus on. As we met with people and heard across the state, there's changes that need to be made there. We're willing to invest both for the short term and then changing that policy or what we need to look at to make improvements going forward later. We don't have a dollar, but again, taking that caution from MMB, saying that legislators need to be very judicious in the way things are spent, knowing that we have a looming deficit is something that we're definitely taking a look at and taking that into consideration. It's also a bonding year. We know that. Investing in roads, bridges, wastewater, those infrastructure needs, that is still being talked about. We are working through, the committees are doing their work through. I would say stay tuned for that. We know that's important across our state, that we're investing in a way that has meaningful investment statewide, not just locally focused in certain areas.
8 weeks to go, he was talking a lot about bipartisanship. Have you felt like there's been much bipartisanship in the legislative session thus
I am always hopeful that there will be, and we can improve on that. One area that I talked about earlier where we brought forward the bill for the straw purchases to increase that penalty, that was, to me, increasing that penalty should not be partisan. Unfortunately, that was voted down on party lines, and then without talking to the original author, there was a Democrat representative that brought that language in another bill at the committee hearing just last week, and when asked on record if she had worked with the original author that we had just a few days brought that forward, she said no. That shouldn't be partisan. I think there's ways we can find a way to work better together. That's what I'm hopeful for. House Republicans stand ready to do that. We've got to be able to be invited to the table and not have our ideas potentially co-opted in a way that they shouldn't be.
Speaking of the straw purchases, this is something that was backed on a bipartisan basis last year with the original bill. Now that there are a couple of additions to that original bill, where is the general temperature on that?
Have you heard that?
Do you want to take that? The new additions on it?
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, if you
Sure.
got it, yeah.
Then I'll let you add to that. You know, what I would say is that they could be two separate issues. There was no reason to use an original bill as a vehicle. We have concerns with some of the other language that is included in there. If we could isolate that to just be the increase on penalties for straw purchases that we all agreed on last year, we would be very open to that. But taking it and twisting it into something that would potentially jeopardize Republican votes is political games, and that's not what our state needs right now.
That's exactly it. Here we have a bill that we see there's a pathway for, that we see that there's a bipartisan appetite for, we think we can get done, and then they start throwing in other poison pills into that particular bill. I mean, this is something that's the safety of our communities. It's important to everybody. Let's figure out a way that we can get it done, and yet it's just games again. So.
Anything else? All right. Thank you.